Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and since it's Women's History Month, I'm here today to talk to you about Two Broke Girls, Season 1, Episode 1, the pilot. I used to really love this series. It came out in 2011 and it used to be extremely hilarious. It lasted for 6 seasons and it ended somewhat on a cliffhanger, I believe. I'm not sure. I never finished all of the 6 seasons. Like, I started this show in season 1 and then I think I tapped out around after season 4. Season 4 was like the last good season for me, or at least one that I really enjoyed. Season 5 I didn't really care for, and so I really didn't watch that, or 6. But then later on, um what was it? I think I had CBS All Access, I think. And I started watching it, but then my subscription ran out or something. I forgot where I watched it at. But like I watched I think all of season 5, did not like that. I watched a good number of season 6, but not towards the end. So I'm not really sure how it ended. I just know that the series started going in a direction I just did not like anymore, because it just didn't feel the same, you know? They had kind of jumped the gun or jumped the shark, I should say, way back in season 2. But it's weird because I love season 1 to death. Season 2 pissed me off to where it took me a long time to buy the DVD. Season 3, I just don't like, period. But season 4, I do. The reason why I don't like season 2 and season 3 is because of the boyfriends in the series. Both Caroline and Max boyfriends were not funny and their acting was so bad. Like the dude in season 2 played Caroline's boyfriend. He likes to do deadpan humor and it's not good. Then in season 3, it's funny because I just got through talking about him in another show called Don't Trust the Bee in Apartment 23. And he was fine in that show, but when it came to this one, it was just unbearable. Plus, I didn't like all the stuff with, like, the bakery school and this and that. And so season 4 I liked. Plus, I was gonna buy that because I love Caroline's new hairstyle. That it was so great. But this show introduced me to Beth Bears. I never knew who she was before then. And it reintroduced me to Kat Dennings, who I saw in The House Bunny. And I was so happy to see her in this series. Now, this show was created, or co-created by Whitney Cummings. And it's funny. She co-created this show, and then she created her own show, Whitney, on NBC. Now, this show came out on CBS, and she had a show on NBC. And her show only lasted for a season, while this went on for 6. That's still the most hilarious thing ever. Now, this isn't going to be so much a rundown review. I'll like talk briefly about some other stuff. I just wanted to talk about the pilot. And so, like, with this series, it's funny because ever since, like, the pilot, people have been trying to get this show pulled off of CBS because of all of its raunchy humor. They have offensive jokes, they have sexual jokes, they have drug reference and stuff like that. There are so many sex jokes in here and perverted ones. It is insane. And it was on CBS. And people were shocked to hear this stuff on CBS. This wasn't Comedy Central. So people were constantly trying to like pull this show, but it never worked. However, after the 3rd season, ratings dropped dramatically in the 4th. And then they dropped even more in the 5th and the 6th, and then the show was canceled. when you watch this show, it's good, it's fun, it's refreshing when you get to like the first season. After a couple of seasons after that, they just don't really change. The satire is the same. They use a laugh track, which rewatching this, I'm just so tired of laugh tracks now because they phase out of that era, and this show had a laugh track, and so like once like it just didn't change. It was always like raunchy humor, smart mouth jokes, and like everything just kept staying the same. Plus they started getting too outrageous with some of the jokes and some of the other stuff, like with the Sophie and the Ole character. They just got to the point where they were just no longer fun but like annoying, especially when they had like a kid. Like the whole Sophie and the baby thing, and her rolling the baby and like jiggling like the stroller and everything like a maniac. It was funny the first time, but doing it over and over and over, it just became too much. And it was one of those things that was good while it was there, but then it outstayed its welcome. And it's quite a shame because I love this show and it was good in the first season, man. I'm telling you. But then there was some other things that kind of bugged me too. I'll get into that after I talk about this review. So, this is a show about like a very, very, very rude waitress. I can't talk. Waitress at a diner, and she is rude to everybody, the customers, her friends, her employee. Why can't I talk? Her employees. She just don't like nobody, and she's very sarcastic, and she's just blunt. She says exactly what is on her mind. And so she's extremely poor too. Always been poor her entire life. Had a very terrible upbringing. Her dad walked out. Her mom was like atrocious, and then she later walked out. They never showed her mom on the show. Supposedly, they were trying to get one or two people, either Cher or Roseanne Barr. Now, Roseanne Barr would have been a better choice, but as we all know now, Roseanne Barr is a disgusting hag and everything. And so, like, Max has no filter. So it's like these two guys and they're being rude, snapping, or one of them snapping at her and be like, waitress, come over here. So she snaps back and she claps back. And so, we get introduced in the show to Han. Han Lee, he is like the new owner. He bought the place. He's this nice man from, I think, Korea or something like that. And he's played by Matthew Moy. And he is just hilarious in this show. Now, originally in the first season, the guys didn't do much, but then as they started becoming more part of the plots and stuff, they started adding more storylines with them. Like Garrett Morris, he played Earl. Earl is like this older man who dresses like he's in the 70s. And he's extremely, and Garrett is extremely famous. He was on SNL, he was on Martin. Very hilarious, funny man. And him and Max get along the best and everything because she just loves him to death. Han, she has no respect for. Then there's Ole, who's played by Jonathan Kite. He is one of the most perverted people I've ever seen on television. If they was to ever remake this now past the Me Too era, his character would be completely reworked. He is just so gross and disgusting with his perversion and stuff. Like, I mean, he is blunt with his perversion. And, it's funny that Whitney Cumming would have that on her show because during the Me Too movement, she went nuts, man. Like, talking about men shouldn't do this and men shouldn't say that and men shouldn't blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just kind of like, so you clearly hate perverted men, but yet you wrote one in your show. But she's a little pervert herself. When she went on to the Wendy Williams show, The first thing she did was grab Wendy's boobs, and Wendy had no idea. They're friends, and she just let it slide. But then she joked around like, "Let me motorboat you," and Wendy then snapped at her like, "No." So it's one of those things that like she's one of those type of people where she don't want to do that to her or nobody else or to a woman, but it's okay for her to do it to somebody else. It's one of those type of people. You know what I'm saying? So after one of the other waitresses got fired from like banging in the back in the storage room and everything, they hired a new one named Caroline. Now we don't know nothing about Caroline right now unless you saw the trailer. And so like we just know that she's a ditzy blonde who never waitress before, and there are stains on her new uniform, and you can probably guess what that is. She looks like a cross between Paris Hilton and Valerie Vernon from Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, with extremely long, sexy legs. My God, she has some of the best legs I've ever seen. And so Max don't want a new waitress, but Han's all like she needs help. So he wants her to train her. And it's very difficult because she lied, pretending to be like a waitress at her old job. And so like she couldn't even marry the Ketchups. Now I didn't know what the world that meant. And I didn't know what that meant until probably about like a year ago, or actually now I think. Because I remember I looked it up. Basically, she thought marrying the Ketchup mean putting them together and then divorcing them, separating them. But what it is just when you have two like half empty bottles of ketchup, you just use one bottle to fill up the other one. There's a woman on YouTube who literally pointed that out and everything. She literally did it and stuff. So anyway, this tells Max this woman is a fraud. But basically, she keeps telling Max, like, look, I need this job. A lot of bad stuff happened. It turns out she used to be filthy rich, super rich, but her father embezzled some money. So Max pulls up like a newspaper article with her father's face on there. Now, this is one of the things that bugged me in season 2. It clearly shows that her father is an old gray-haired man. And by the way Caroline keeps describing him, you get the idea he's old and gray. And a little bit probably like, a person who is still money, so you probably think he's cocky or something like that. When we meet him in season 2, he's young, like very young, like in his 40s or 50s young, but still has long brown hair. And he's super duper nice. And I'm just like, that's not how I envisioned him. I envisioned him completely different. He stole a bunch of money. He looked one way in the newspaper. And I felt like introducing him in the first episode of season 2 just ruined everything. Because should have been like the big reveal towards the end of the series, like who is the man that made Caroline so dirt poor? You know what I'm saying? And then they spoiled it in season 2. That's not all they spoiled though. So anyways, she's not very good at being a waitress at all. She can't do nothing because she's used to people serving her. You know what I'm saying? And so Max is like not a very friendly person and don't really want to chit chat, but she gives her a little advice. Don't wear fancy jewelry in the neighborhood they're in because she'll get robbed. And so she's all like, oh, I'm gonna go stay with some friends because, her place, her mansion is locked up by the RS and stuff. So anyway, Max goes home. We get introduced to Max's boyfriend. He has a bunch of friends over. She tells him she has to like make the cupcakes in the morning, can't stay up, but he takes off her shirt and she loves abs. Now, when her and Caroline was talking, Caroline was talking about why is this person pricing the donuts for like $1.50, price them for $7 like this other place does, and then we get to keep the money, from the difference from $1.50, which what's the name Max thinks is wrong and think, wow, you're just like your father and everything, stealing from folks. And so, like, turns out, Max makes the cupcakes. And so, like, Max has another job to get to. She has to go to Peach's place. And so, Peach, I don't know, at one point I thought they said it was her cousin, I don't know. But Peach has two twins. She's rich and she's spoiled rotten. And so she talks about like Caroline and how Caroline's father stole. And then she lets Max know that Caroline's friends don't want nothing to do with her and they pretend like they're not home because they don't want her to stay with them. So Caroline is homeless on top of being poor. And so when Max was in the subway, the funniest thing happened, like in the trailer, the subway started, she bumped and slipped and fell and kissed a woman. And it made it seem like the woman did not like it at first, but then she gives her her phone number. But then this is when Max realizes Caroline is homeless because she's sleeping on the subway cart and everything. And it's funny how she wakes Caroline because Caroline gets so scared thinking she's being assaulted and pulls out a taser. Zaps Max to where she just slowly collapses on the floor. Oh, I love that in the trailer and love that in the show. So Max, being the nice person that she is, she lets her stay with her. In the morning, Caroline meets Max's boyfriend and he tries to hit on her. Caroline tells Max, and Max is furious and does not believe it until Max goes home and hears him banging another woman. So then she goes back to the diner and she meets Caroline and tell her, you know what? You was right. You're a nice person, and you were just trying to help me. So they start living together. And Max asked her, is there anything you need to grab from your house before it's completely locked up? Well, it turns out to be a horse, Chestnut. Now, the horse is because Beth Bears love horses to death. And it was cool having a horse on like the show, what I'm saying? And seeing both of them on top of it, on top of that, because you just never really pictured that. But anyway, Caroline is all like, with your cupcakes, we can start a business together. I'll do the business stuff. You just bake the cupcakes and we'll start our own little thing. And this way I can get out of being poor. And so Max is, being poor all her life. She's like, sure, why not? She don't think nobody will buy her cupcakes because Max doesn't believe in herself. And so the thing about this whole series was, you have two people. One's rough around the edges and one is spoiled rotten and super sweet. And they bring out the best in both of each other and they teach each other stuff. Max is teaching Caroline how to be poor and how to budget and everything and the means of struggle, and Caroline is teaching Max how to look for a better tomorrow, how to make a business for yourself, and how to be a better person. And it was great until they ruined it. Also in season 2, what ruins it is that, them getting their cupcake business is what they're striving for. Should have been like the last thing in the series. Should have been like the last season or the last episode, something, right? Because every episode ends with like how much money they have saving up for their cupcake business. Sometimes it's 100, sometimes it goes down to 0. Well, they decided to rush the storyline of getting them their cupcake business in season 2. And it was doing good for a while until they could not keep the business afloat and they lost it. And I'm thinking to myself, well, heck, that was the whole premise of the series and they crashed and burnt. So what's the point in watching the rest of the series? And other people felt the same way too. And so with the first business crashing and burning, somewhere in between season 3 and season 4, they start up another business and it starts to be a bit better. And so it's like, okay, well, the show should technically end now. They made it to their goal. They get their own business. But it kept going and going and going. And all these new plots and Matt meeting like this famous movie star type dude. And it was just like, it wasn't what the show felt like it should have been. They tried to be different, ambitious. I get that. But it did not pay off. People are used to a set formula and everything. It's kind of like when I used to watch this show called, and I can't remember his name right now. It was an NBC show and it lasted for 2 seasons. It was kind of like a sci-fi futuristic type show, pioneer type show, where all the power went out and there was like these weird necklaces that made the power come back on. And the plot was to figure out what these necklaces do and also get back this girl's brother. Well, we found all that out in the first half of the season. And by the second half, they killed the brother, and we found out what the little necklaces do. So, what was the point in the rest of the series? And it crashed and burned in the second. To where I didn't even really watch the second season. I just gave up. I gave up after the first half of the first season because they already accomplished their goal. They found the brother, and then he died. That's kind of how this show is, you know? So I wish they would not have rushed those two storylines of Caroline's father and the cupcake business. But you know, it is what it is and stuff. But these two were great. They have great chemistry together. They were like the Tina Fey and Amy Poehler of like CBS. And you know, Beth, she went on to do the Neighbor show, which is still going on now. And Kat had a show on Hulu that she created, but it got canceled after 2 seasons. I did not understand that show. It was the show with the lady with the giant cat head. I didn't understand that. I particularly did not like it. But the great thing is Kat bounced back because she's in the MCU. But her character isn't really all that prominent, but she still bops in and bops out of the MCU and stuff. Now, one thing I forgot to mention, Sophie is played by Jennifer Coolidge and everything. I was so ecstatic when she got cast as this role because the only thing I knew her from was that of Stifler's mom. And so I was ecstatic. And she was hilarious in this show, but then they kind of overdid her character as the season kept going, or the series kept going. And so, like, she was supposed to be a one and done character after the first season, but people loved her so much they kept her on the show. And I'm so glad they did. Happy Women's History Month, everybody. All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye.